There's a mentality among us as a people that the system is biased against us, and from me you'll get no argument. However, we shouldn't defend black behavior that some of our people decide to engage in. I, for one, I'm not going to go to bat for somebody who's been a career criminal. As a young boy, I remember hearing the story about the boy who cried wolf. You know, he had engaged in his lying ways for so long that when a real wolf came, no one believed him. Now, my second grade teacher, Miss Booth, told me and a couple other boys that story. I don't know why she picked us out to tell us that story. You know, to this day, I still don't know why she told us that story. But another topic for another day. But it becomes very hard for us to defend a career criminal, even if he's innocent, when his past actions have shown otherwise. There are many cases currently and throughout history that shows that there are actually some biased activities going on in this system of laws. And we have a tendency to look at incidents that happen, and we never realize that each case is different and each case is heard in a different jurisdiction or state, because federal law does not trump state law that's afforded to the states by the 10th Amendment. Sometimes the judges and attorneys are white, and sometimes they're black. Sometimes criminals are Hispanic, and you know, you notice you don't see too many of the other foreigners in those positions because they come here, get involved in economics and not the system. Sometimes our defendants, black, white, and Hispanic, for the most part. You know, very few of the others that come from other countries. And when the United States Constitution was actually fashioned, you had some of the founders who believed it's for whites only, and you had some founders who believed it's for everybody. It's just the way it is. And people are going to be people regardless of time in history, be it past, be it present, and be it future. People are going to be people. What we're dealing with is a heart problem. We'll never be able to change other people's hearts. We have to change our hearts. And the best thing we can do for society is to work on improving ourselves and our behaviors and our attitude. Should crimes of the same caliber be prosecuted the same way across the board, irrespective of locale? I believe they should. You know, if we know the system's going to treat us unfairly, one would think that we'd actually do a better job of avoiding crime. Do innocent people get targeted? Sure they do. Brian Banks, he's doing a show right now called Final Appeal with an attorney, Lonnie Coons. Brian Banks was an All-American linebacker in high school, and a schoolmate actually accused him of rape falsely. And he served, I believe, 5 years in prison until a young lady finally came forth and said she made it up. I believe young ladies that do that need to serve some prison time just as long as the person that went to prison did. I believe they need to serve the same amount of time. But the reason we don't enjoy some of the same benefits of white society has some prehistoric and primitive roots. And we don't hear many people talk about prehistoric times or primitive times, but our system of laws is still based on that system. But nobody's talking about that. And as a people, we've spent a lot of energy trying to be part of the very system that we say we despise. And then we claim it mistreats us. However, anything that goes against the system is frowned upon by many in the black community. And because they want to be part of it. You know, just a certain class of black folks, that is. And they want to be part of it and then be the managers of the rest of you. Study what Bob Moses said about when they took that ride up to the Democratic National Convention in '64. Bob Moses, that is. Robert Moses, Bob Moses. We had our own communities, we had our own schools, we had our own universities, we had our own companies long ago. But we wanted to be like them other folks. And Proverbs 3:31 says, don't envy your oppressor and don't choose his ways. But for some reason we thought white was right, so we worked very hard to become part of the very system that our ancestors wanted no part of. They just wanted equal access. They didn't want to become part of it. They wanted equal access. But Black misleadership said they wanted to get political seats. And so, because they wanted to be part of the power base. And you got more politicians, black politicians now than ever. It's part of the Democratic Party. And same party that enslaved your ancestors. Same party that created Jim Crow laws. Same party that created the lynch codes. Lynch laws, I mean. Same party that founded the KKK. Same party that created something called convict leasing. And we say Republicans are our problem. We say the Democrats went to bat for us to give our voting rights back and our equality back with 64 Civil Rights Act and the 65 Voting Rights Act. They was giving back everything that their party took away. And if you study your history, you see more Republicans supported the laws of Democrats even then. But anyway, we had our own businesses. And we had to be included in the education system, so we fought very hard to be included in their schools. Now we complain about them teaching us their history, not our own. We had our own businesses, as I mentioned, but we fought very hard to become part of theirs because that disease, white is always rightist, just would not go away regardless of what remedy we apply. Our former black misleadership said that Prestige was working in white-owned companies. Now we complain that they won't promote us at the same rate as their own and that they refuse to pay us the same pay as one of theirs. We had our own successful communities, but they weren't good enough for us either. Just as we complain of white flight, there's also something called black flight. Whenever whites leave a community, we ain't far behind them. We just don't seem to be able to make any moves on our own without the system approving it first. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some exceptional multicultural neighborhoods throughout this country. But we now complain that law enforcement target our youth unfairly in some of these neighborhoods that we ran to because we considered them safer. And just to make sure we're clear, the definition of safer used here means white. While laws were actually being created in this country for everybody to abide by, they were in actuality to only apply to non-whites. Whites continue to live under what is called prehistoric and primitive law when it came to crimes and misdemeanors. What is prehistoric and primitive law, you ask? Under the system of prehistoric and primitive law, obligation only exists between people of the same blood. This means that the family is only obligated to one another regardless of the crime they may have committed against somebody else. It was also changed to mean that bloodlines could be extended to protect people that shared the same skin color. Technically, or scientifically, the same skin tone does not mean shared blood. Did you hear that? But the Romans created a law that gave the extension of family to all people of white skin. Now when you study Roman law, you study what happened in 70 AD, from 66 to 70 AD, you'll understand what the Romans have to do with all of this. Romans ran you out of your homeland. Romans, Pope Borgia painted a white Christ. And all of that royal ancestry that you see over there now, all your royalty used to be black. But, you know, they stole your identity. All your identity was stolen in Judah, tribe of Judah. Not Jewish, Judah. But anyway, the Romans created an extension of family to people that had same skin tone. And they were actually only to practice decent conduct and behavior to those of shared blood, be it by birth or Roman law. This actually means that whites in the United States, or anywhere else for that matter, had no obligation to anyone outside the family. And what you need to understand is we're still under the old British law in this country. Study that for yourself. And that's why, you know, we complain of having video evidence of police abuse and they get away with it. They don't have no obligation to you. They're obligated to the system. Those within the system are considered one family, even if they're black. Black or white, they're one family. When your black people become part of that system, they've been married into the family. And you need to understand that. You know, and they're considered part of the family until they step out of line. Look at it historically. You know, when they start seeing the things that they've actually signed on to are actually detrimental to black folks, and then they start complaining and they step out of line, they getting put out the family. You know, but under laws such as this, a man had no moral duty to protect or respect people of another race, especially the darker race. And when you find out that the Native Americans were actually black, we call them Aborigines, and that Christopher Columbus picked up a lot of them when he came over here, took them back to Europe, used them as slave labor, and then shipped some down to Africa, used them as slave labor there, along with the African chieftains, and then put them on ships and send them back right to their homeland that they took them away from. If you study the Webster's Dictionary definition of American back in 1828, it says an American was somebody that had copper-colored skin, but now claim to be American if they have white skin. Huh. Amazing, ain't it? But under this system of prehistoric and primitive law, a man had no moral duty to respect dark-skinned people. He was expected to honor his clan. You know, today we call it tribalism. But he could violate another person's property, life, or family and actually be considered virtuous. Looking at this, we can see that many whites have no problem destroying black progress and families. And you got a lot of blacks out there that do the same thing because they become part of the system. And the only way they can remain part of the power base is by helping to keep you down. And that's just what they want. They want the crumbs off the master's table. So, under a set of laws like this, they actually feel that they're obligated to steal from another race if it would advance their own cause. Judah. If a murder was committed outside of the family, the guilty party was protected by the family. And if a murder happened within the family, justice was to be handled by the family. Just based on this, we see that whites had no obligation to those who had black skin. Now, nothing's ever 100%. So this doesn't apply to all white people, because many whites fought against the family if they deemed something to be wrong. The Civil War was a perfect example of that, because slavery was wrong. And there were many whites, such as John Woolman, and John Woolman has an excellent book with collected books that have been compiled in a one-volume set. And John Woolman, W-O-O-L-M-A-N. And John Woolman was unalterably opposed to slavery. But you had guys like him and Richard Baxter and George Fox, you know, just to name a few. There were many others, but I've read John Woolman's writings. And as crazy as it might seem, lynchings were actually considered self-help and were part of prehistoric and primitive law. By having laws placed on the books, they were saying that the laws were to be followed by non-whites only. put in place by whites. And, you know, under a system such as this, blacks were not allowed to handle issues within their own communities without a white person's oversight or input. And think about that. Think about slavery. When the slave masters didn't want to sit in the spiritual meetings or the church meetings or the church gatherings, they would actually employ black preachers back then to sit in on those church gatherings and then report back to them what was being said at the church gatherings. So if you were planning an uprising, your black preacher would go back and report it to them. If you were planning to escape, your black preacher would go back and report to them. Now, when Margaret Sanger started Planned Parenthood, she said, we want to use the black preachers to get the message out, to sell a message to that congregation about the need to exterminate the undesirable black babies. And if you look at a lot of your people that went to fight for civil rights, most of them were black preachers. And then you look at what increased after the '64 Civil Rights Act. You look at, we had a higher rate of abortion in our communities. That abortion increased. Out of wedlock births increased. Broken homes increased. Fatherless homes increased. Crime increased. Poverty increased. Economic opportunities decreased. Wealth decreased because you had a lot of black wealthy folks leading up to that '64 Act. And so guess what else increased after '64? The number of black politicians at the local and state level. Because we have 535 seats in the Congress and the Senate, and less than 10% of them right today are still inhabited by blacks. And James Weldon Johnson said at the NAACP convention in 1924, the goal of this organization is to secure more seats for black politicians. So you find out who founded and started your NAACP, your Urban League. You find out who financed the Civil Rights Movement. Find out who financed the Black Lives Matter movement. Put it all together. It's the same folks. And you find out who stole your identity as a people. And it seems to be the same group. I believe Revelation 2:9 and Revelation 3:9 has something to say about that. But hey, what do I know? And speaking of but hey, what do I know? Some of you know I did write a book and released it at the end of November. And it is available with the same title, But Hey, What Do I Know? Available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and my personal site, ButHeyWhatDoIKnow.com. And I touch on all these areas that are hurting us as a race of black people. And you know, people might perceive it as being trying to promote segregation, but I'm not promoting segregation. I'm promoting autonomy. You know, we can still be autonomous without being segregated, just like everybody else in this country. But I'll put the link to the book in the description box. But hey, whatdoiknow.com, and I'm talking about everything that's impacting us, from the lack of manhood, the lack of womanhood, the lack of parenthood. I'm talking about our love affair with a certain economic system, how we keep blaming the Republicans for all of our ills, but the Republicans, we don't support them. But we keep blaming them for everything that go wrong in our communities. In the city of Houston, we haven't had a Republican mayor since the late '70s. But the Republicans get all the blame and finger pointing. We won't point our finger or blame our Democrats for nothing because we're in love with them. The same people who gave us all the stuff that hurts us. And they still claiming to fight for us. But we ain't saw no improvements since we reversed our total loyalty in 1964. We ain't improved in nothing. 1977, 35% of black college graduates graduated from HBCUs, which means 65% graduated from predominantly white universities. The latest figure I read, 14% of black college graduates today are graduating from HBCUs, which means 86% of our black college graduates are not graduating from HBCUs, they graduate from predominantly white universities. But we want to run around here claiming pro-blackness. We love black people. We love everything black. But we trying to get into white schools. Then complain about them not teaching us our history. But in a sense, let me get back to my topic, because you know I tend to get off every now and then. But whites could live under the system of these primitive laws and they could get away with all types of crime. But blacks have to go to the legal system to get justice, which gave whites the power over blacks again. Whites are, in a sense, continuing to operate under prehistoric and primitive laws, while blacks have to operate under the system of laws that whites created separately for them. Blacks are still treated as outsiders when it comes to justice, because laws on the books don't allow them to handle their own situations in-house. Let's face it, the system is an in-house system. And it's an in-house system for whites and those blacks who agree to play ball at the expense of the black race. There are many blacks who believe that race comes before everything. And I believe in my race, but I'm not going to place my race above what's right and moral, regardless of your color. I don't care. And we actually have black misleadership out there promoting race against everything. Race above everything, I should say. You know, systematic law says that the system has to take care of any wrongdoing committed against you if you're not white. These laws don't allow blacks to protect their own families and communities. You know, even if they've been offended. These laws say that blacks must turn to the legal system to get justice. However, whites are still administering their own justice via the prehistoric law system. Whites are still allowed to operate under primitive laws when it comes to protecting their own, even when they're in the wrong. They have implemented it into the system. If a black commits an offense against another black, they accomplish the end goal for the system. 2 black men get removed from society, which means less protection for the black family and the community. And don't let a black kill a white,